I tried to turn my back to that, but I just didn't want to share him. Simple as that. As much as he wanted to be married and have a family, I don't know if he was ever cut to be married.
After Elvis's death, Priscilla made an unexpected decision no one expected. She never remarried. Why would a woman so young, beautiful, and admired choose to stay single for the rest of her life? Was it out of love, fear, or a promise she never spoke of? Now at 80, Priscilla finally reveals the truth, and this is not what you expect. The early story of Priscilla and Elvis. In the autumn of 1959, the quiet town of Bad Nauheim, West Germany, became the unexpected place where one of the most talked-about romances in pop culture history began. 14-year-old Priscilla Beaulieu had just arrived in Germany, where her stepfather was stationed with the United States Air Force. Her world was about to change in a way no one could have predicted. Elvis Presley, already a world-famous music icon, was also living in the area while serving in the U.S. Army. Their paths crossed at a casual house party arranged by someone in Elvis's circle.
I was only 14, actually only 3 months into 14, and visited him at his home.
Because he was a superstar.
Of course, my God, he was at the top
And he was
of his
24.
game. He was 24 years old, yeah.
Priscilla, curious and a little nervous, wore a modest sailor-style dress to the gathering. She had heard of Elvis, of course, who hadn't? But she had no real idea what it would mean to meet him, let alone what would follow. When Elvis first laid eyes on Priscilla, he was struck by her soft features, dark hair, and gentle presence. She reminded him of someone very special to him, his mother, Gladys Presley, who had passed away the year before. Her quiet innocence and beauty made an impression on Elvis, who was still grieving and emotionally vulnerable. Though there was a significant age gap, he was 24 and she was just 14, Elvis took an immediate liking to her. Their first conversation was light and filled with small smiles. Priscilla, both excited and unsure, tried to keep up with the energy of the older star. Elvis, who was used to being in control, quickly started to pursue her with a mix of charm and attentiveness. Despite her young age, Priscilla felt drawn to him. For a girl who had just moved to a new country, being noticed by someone like Elvis felt almost unreal. The attention quickly became intense. Elvis would invite her back to visit, and she started spending more and more time around him. He was kind and affectionate, but also made it clear that he wanted to guide her. He didn't push for a physical relationship right away. Instead, he focused on winning her trust and the approval of her parents.
What were your dear parents thinking to allow that?
My parents were a nervous wreck. Elvis came in full uniform, which my dad liked a lot. And
her father was deeply concerned about the age difference, but Elvis was persuasive, respectful, and generous. Over time, the family allowed more visits. As the months passed, Priscilla became increasingly attached. She lived for the moments she could see Elvis. At school, her performance started to drop. Her thoughts were consumed by him. She lost interest in most other parts of her life, focusing solely on their next meeting. Her parents grew worried and tried to set boundaries, but each time they attempted to pull her away, she would become emotional, defiant, and deeply upset. Her world was becoming all about Elvis. Even though they spent a lot of time together while in Germany, their relationship remained carefully controlled. Elvis often said he wanted Priscilla to stay pure until they were married. This decision was something he strongly believed in, even though he had other relationships and temptations. In a way, he was trying to shape her future and keep her close until he was ready to bring her fully into his life. When his military service ended in 1960, Elvis returned to the United States, leaving Priscilla behind. She was devastated. The separation was painful for her, and it became clear that their connection wasn't just a teenage crush. Elvis kept in touch, calling often, sending letters, and promising they would see each other again. But the distance was hard. Eventually, Priscilla's longing to be near him again grew stronger than ever. She pleaded with her parents to let her visit him in Memphis. After a lot of persuasion and with strict conditions in place, they allowed her to make the trip when she was just 15. Elvis welcomed her and made sure everything was carefully arranged. During that visit, he began to shape her image, changing her makeup, guiding her wardrobe, and slowly molding her into what he considered the perfect girl. He wanted her to look glamorous yet innocent, striking yet soft. That visit confirmed how much Priscilla wanted to be in his world full-time. She went back to Germany with a new determination. She begged and negotiated with her parents over and over again.
But yes, they were nervous, and I think it was when I told my parents that they had to let me go or they would ruin my life.
Finally, in 1963, when she was 17, they gave in under the condition that she would finish high school in Memphis. She was allowed to move in, not directly with Elvis, but with his father, Vernon Presley, in the house behind Graceland. That moment marked a big turning point in their relationship. Priscilla was no longer a visiting teenager. She was now part of Elvis's daily life. From then on, she became fully involved in his world. The fame, the pressure, the glamour, and the control. She adjusted to his rules, his moods, and his demands. Elvis continued to shape her, deciding how she dressed, styled her hair, and acted in public. Their relationship had tender moments and shared dreams, but it wasn't without difficulty. The age gap, the power imbalance, and the public attention made it hard for Priscilla to find her own identity. She was still growing up, learning who she was, while also trying to fit into someone else's idea of perfection. Over time, doubts and challenges began to surface. Elvis's busy touring schedule and his growing list of admirers created distance, even when they were in the same house.
Than he did singing. I mean, was that difficult to watch?
Yeah, because they'd start showing up after the show.
I bet they did.
Kind of hanging out, waiting around for possible more.
Priscilla remained loyal, but deep down, questions and worries began to build. She loved Elvis, but she was still young, trying to find her place in a complicated world. There were sweet moments, laughter and promises, but also silence, waiting, and the pressure of being someone she wasn't always sure she wanted to become. In the months leading up to their marriage in 1967, their relationship became even more serious. Discussions of commitment became more frequent. Elvis had made a promise to her parents to eventually marry her, and Priscilla had now been in his life for almost 8 years. So when did Elvis and Priscilla tie the knot? Elvis and Priscilla's married life and the challenges it brought. After years of waiting, distance, and longing, Elvis Presley and Priscilla Beaulieu finally became husband and wife in 1967. Their love story had begun when she was a young teen, swept into the glamorous yet complicated life of the world's biggest music star. As they stood side by side in Las Vegas on the morning of their wedding, it seemed like a dream come true. Behind their smiles, however, were quiet doubts and heavy expectations. Their marriage ceremony was quick and private, lasting only minutes. Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, had pushed for it, hoping to avoid more gossip about the couple's unusual arrangement, Priscilla living in Graceland while still so young and unmarried. The world watched with fascination as the king of rock and roll married the woman he had carefully brought into his life, shaped and prepared for this very moment. In the early days of their marriage, love still held them together. Priscilla adored Elvis and tried to be everything he wanted. She was gentle, quiet, and loyal. Elvis showed affection and generosity, bringing her into the spotlight while also protecting her from it. They shared sweet moments, laughed together, and felt the thrill of being newlyweds. But cracks slowly began to form beneath the surface. Priscilla battled with deep insecurity. She constantly worried about Elvis's attention being pulled away by his busy schedule, by other women, or simply by the pressures of fame.
So don't you mess around with me.
You know, he wasn't faithful. Not that he had someone special, but
Surrounded by beauty, temptation, and public admiration, Elvis was never truly out of reach from the outside world. Priscilla, still young and uncertain, often questioned whether she could keep his love or remain interesting in his eyes. Every time he traveled or performed, fear would creep in. Fear of being forgotten, of being left behind. 9 months into their marriage, Priscilla gave birth to their daughter, Lisa Marie Presley, in early 1968. It should have been a time of joy, but both parents were overwhelmed. Elvis, still trying to balance his image as a heartthrob and performer, wasn't sure how fatherhood would affect his career. He loved Lisa, but something in him shifted. Priscilla also struggled with her role as a new mother. She feared that her pregnancy had changed the way Elvis saw her. She wasn't the carefree, childless girl he had fallen for. She worried he might not find her desirable anymore. During her pregnancy, Elvis unexpectedly distanced himself. He needed space, he said, and left her behind to think. Though the separation was brief, it was painful for Priscilla. It planted the seed of uncertainty in their marriage. When he returned, things were not the same. After Lisa's birth, their physical closeness disappeared. Elvis no longer wanted to share a bed with Priscilla. She felt confused, rejected, and alone. He couldn't explain his reasons clearly, only that he didn't feel the same. Priscilla was hurt but stayed, trying to be patient and understanding. As Elvis returned to performing, movies, and recording sessions, he became even busier. The demands on his time left Priscilla feeling abandoned. While he was on the road, she was left alone at Graceland with their child. Her days were quiet, her nights filled with waiting. The man who had once chased her across continents now seemed emotionally far away, lost in his own world. Whenever she tried to connect with him or ask about his struggles, he shut down. He couldn't open up or let her in. Elvis was dealing with much more than fame. He had begun using prescription substances, sometimes to sleep, sometimes to stay awake, and sometimes to numb his pain. He carried the weight of enormous pressure, the fear of losing his voice, his fans, or his spark. But he didn't know how to talk about it, especially not to Priscilla. He didn't want her to see his pain or confusion. So he stayed silent, pretending everything was fine, even as things inside him slowly fell apart. The deeper his troubles became, the further he pulled away. Priscilla tried to be supportive, but she was left guessing about what was really going on. Her love felt unanswered. She still admired him, still wanted the closeness they once shared, but it was slipping away. The home they had built was filled with people, staff, and noise, but emotionally, it had grown quiet. Their conversations grew short and shallow. Elvis would come home from a tour or a performance and bring gifts, but not affection. Priscilla began to feel like a stranger in her own marriage. The passion, the laughter, the late-night talks, all the magic of their early days had faded. She missed the version of Elvis who used to hold her hand and listen to her heart. Now he was always tired, distracted, or distant. Even though they still appeared like a perfect couple in public, the truth behind the scenes was different. Priscilla felt like she was playing a role, Elvis's wife, Lisa's mother, but she had lost her sense of self. The girl who had once left everything behind to be with the man she loved was now unsure of who she had become. She missed being seen, being heard, and being cherished. Elvis, too, was struggling in silence. The spotlight that once gave him life had become a burden. He couldn't escape the pressure to stay perfect, stay relevant, and stay strong. But instead of leaning on his wife, he turned inward, or toward those around him who would not ask questions. He couldn't let her see his weakness, so he built a wall. As the years passed, their love, once so full of promise, slowly unraveled under the weight of fame, fear, and unspoken pain. The fairy tale they had dreamed of became harder and harder to hold on to. And after years of struggling to stay afloat, Priscilla decided to walk away. The day Priscilla walked away. By the end of the 1960s, the fairy tale that once surrounded Elvis and Priscilla Presley had started to fade. What had begun with excitement, youth, and dreams of forever was slowly replaced by silence, loneliness, and unspoken pain. Priscilla had spent her entire youth becoming what Elvis wanted, changing her appearance, her behavior, and even her lifestyle. But as the years passed, she began to feel like a shadow of herself.
I was kind of lost really in who I was, early in my life. I really didn't have a teenage years. I learned so much about him and was with him so much that I thought the way he did.
Everything in her world revolved around Elvis. There was little space left for who she really was or who she wanted to be. While Elvis traveled constantly for his music career, especially during his big comeback in the late 1960s, Priscilla stayed behind at Graceland. She took care of their young daughter, Lisa Marie, and waited patiently for the man she loved to come home. But more often than not, she found herself feeling alone and ignored. She begged for attention, hoping to feel seen and valued in their marriage. But Elvis, overwhelmed by fame, touring, and personal issues, seemed further and further away. He had stopped sharing his heart with her. He didn't ask about her days, her thoughts, or her feelings, and worst of all, he barely connected with their daughter. Lisa Marie was growing up with a father who was more like a distant visitor than a parent. Priscilla noticed the sadness in her little girl's eyes and the emptiness in their home. She tried her best to fill the gap, but it was hard to do it all alone. Elvis's world was full of distractions, music, fans, and unfortunately, other women. He had romantic encounters during his tours, some of which became known to Priscilla. She had heard the rumors and even seen some signs. Though hurt, she kept silent for a long time, hoping things would change. But they didn't. The man who had once promised her everything seemed to forget what they had once meant to each other. Meanwhile, Priscilla, feeling invisible and emotionally starved, began searching for something outside the walls of Graceland. In 1968, she enrolled in private dance lessons, something simple to bring joy back into her life. It started as a harmless hobby, but it quickly grew into something deeper. Her dance instructor, Mike Stone, was kind and attentive, the opposite of what she had grown used to at home. Their bond grew stronger over time, and eventually they began a quiet affair. This new relationship woke something up in Priscilla. For the first time in years, she felt alive. She laughed, smiled, and felt like her own person again. She wasn't just Elvis Presley's wife, she was Priscilla. The experience made her realize how much of herself she had given up in the name of love. And once that door was open, she couldn't go back to how things were. In 1972, after months of internal struggle, Priscilla sat down and told Elvis the truth. She confessed the affair and said she wanted to leave. It wasn't just about Mike Stone, it was about everything. The neglect, the control, the isolation. She still had love for Elvis, but she couldn't keep pretending that their marriage was healthy. She needed to find her voice again, to understand who she was outside of his shadow. Elvis was crushed. He hadn't expected her to leave. In his mind, she had always belonged to him, no matter what he did. He had been unfaithful too, but never believed Priscilla would ever step away.
He wasn't faithful, not that he had someone special, but when you're in the entertainment business, there is always that. And I tried to...
His reaction was filled with anger, confusion, and pain. In that moment of rejection, he lashed out emotionally and physically, making advances that Priscilla would later describe as deeply upsetting and unkind. She felt completely misunderstood. Once again, her needs as a woman were pushed aside. That moment sealed her decision. Priscilla knew she could not live like this anymore. In July of 1972, she left Graceland and filed for divorce. It wasn't an easy choice. She had been by Elvis's side since she was a teenager. Their memories, their child, and their long history made it heartbreaking. But she had reached her limit. Her heart was tired and her spirit needed peace. Elvis tried hard to win her back. He called, he cried, and he even considered harming Mike Stone out of anger. Friends had to calm him down and remind him that violence would solve nothing. In his pain, he realized too late how far things had gone. But Priscilla stood firm. She couldn't go back to being the silent partner in a one-sided love story. She wanted independence. She wanted to live, not just survive. Their divorce was finalized in October 1973. Priscilla was granted custody of Lisa Marie, along with support that gave her space to build a new life. Though the romantic part of their journey was over, Priscilla and Elvis kept a close bond. She didn't hate him. In fact, she always held a special place in her heart for him. They stayed in contact and shared moments as co-parents and old friends.
Waiting around for possible more.
But if you're gonna start a rumble, don't you try.
Priscilla's life after saying goodbye. After her divorce from Elvis Presley in 1973, Priscilla Presley found herself standing at a crossroads. For over a decade, she had been known simply as Elvis's wife, the girl who had shaped herself to fit into his world. Now, with their marriage officially over, she wanted to build her own life and identity. It was both a freeing and frightening time for her. She had a young daughter to raise, dreams to discover, and a heart that still cared deeply for the man she had left behind. At first, Priscilla focused on rebuilding herself. She had spent most of her youth under Elvis's watchful eye, making choices based on what he wanted. Now she wanted to make decisions for herself. She started exploring the business world, trying to stand on her own. Although Elvis had been heartbroken when she left, he hadn't given up on the idea of winning her back. He would call, send messages, and express regret. Deep down, he still hoped they could somehow find their way back to each other. But Elvis was struggling. Without Priscilla by his side, his world started to spiral. The people around him, especially his manager, Colonel Tom Parker, had too much control over his life. Colonel Parker scheduled non-stop concerts and tours, often ignoring Elvis's health and emotional needs. Elvis, tired and overwhelmed, felt trapped by fame and forced into a routine that drained him. He wanted to rest, but Parker kept pushing him to perform. To cope with the pressure, Elvis began relying more heavily on prescription substances. These medications, meant to help him sleep or stay awake, became a regular part of his life. His health began to decline. The sparkle in his eyes slowly faded, and the lively, energetic man fans adored seemed to disappear. Behind the bright lights of the stage was someone sad, lonely, and lost. His house was full of people, yet he felt alone. Though Elvis loved his daughter Lisa Marie deeply, he didn't know how to fully connect with her after the divorce. Priscilla had custody, so most of Lisa's time was spent with her mother. Elvis would visit, and they had sweet moments together, but he was often distracted or too exhausted to be present. He wanted to be a good father, but the weight of fame, addiction, and sadness often got in the way. Priscilla, watching from a distance, remained concerned. She wanted Elvis to find peace. She knew how much he had given to the world and how little he had kept for himself. Their relationship was no longer romantic, but they still shared a special bond, built on years of memories, a child, and a deep understanding that never truly faded. Then, in August 1977, everything changed. Elvis Presley passed away suddenly at the age of 42. The news shook the world. For Priscilla, the pain was crushing. When she received the call, she could hardly believe it. It felt like a bad dream. She later described the moment as one of the darkest of her life. Lisa Marie was just 9 years old, too young to lose her father, too innocent to understand the full weight of that loss. Even though they had divorced, Priscilla's love for Elvis had never vanished. She grieved deeply, not only for the man but for everything he had been through. She knew the pain he had hidden from the world. She had seen his struggles up close, the loneliness, the silence, and the sadness behind his smile. After Elvis's death, Priscilla stepped into a new role, protector of his legacy. Lisa Marie was named the sole heir to Elvis's estate, but she was still a child. Graceland, Elvis's beloved home, was in financial trouble, costing hundreds of thousands of dollars each year just to keep running. There were talks of selling it off, but Priscilla refused to let that happen. She rolled up her sleeves and took charge of the estate, determined to honor Elvis's memory. She made the bold decision to open Graceland to the public in 1982. Some people doubted her, thinking it wouldn't work. But within a few months, Priscilla had turned Graceland into a success. The home that once felt like a prison to her now became a place where millions of fans could remember Elvis with love and admiration. She had not only saved his legacy, she had built a thriving tribute that would last for generations. In the years that followed, Priscilla also built her own career. She acted in films, most famously in the comedy series Naked Gun, and starred in the hit television show Dallas during the 1980s. People began to see her not just as Elvis's ex-wife, but as a woman with talent, grace, and determination. In her personal life, Priscilla found love again with producer Marco Garibaldi. They were together for over 2 decades and had a son, Navarone, in 1987. Still, Priscilla made it clear that she had no desire to marry again. Elvis had been the great love of her life, and no one could ever replace that. Even after so many years, Priscilla never stopped speaking with warmth and respect about Elvis. She wrote books about their time together, approved projects that honored him, and remained involved in everything connected to his legacy. But why did Priscilla never marry again? Why Priscilla could never commit to another man? After the death of Elvis Presley in 1977, many people assumed that Priscilla Presley would one day remarry and start a new chapter in her life. She was still young, beautiful, and full of potential. But that day never came. Decades passed, and Priscilla remained single. She continued to live her life without ever becoming a bride again. It wasn't because she couldn't find love. It was because she believed she had already experienced the greatest love of her life, and nothing else could come close. After Elvis passed away, Lisa was just a little girl, only 9 years old. It was a confusing and painful time for her. Priscilla became both mother and father to Lisa, making sure she had stability, love, and strength. She moved carefully through life, building a safe world for her daughter while also trying to find healing from her own heartbreak. She didn't try to fill the space Elvis left. Instead, she kept his memory alive for Lisa by telling her stories, playing his music, and sharing their moments with her. As Lisa Marie grew older, she became more curious about her father. She often spoke about the weight of being Elvis's daughter and how it shaped her. Priscilla became her biggest support system. She gave Lisa room to find her own path while keeping her grounded in truth. Lisa followed her father's footsteps into music, and though she faced struggles, Priscilla remained close by, offering love without judgment. Throughout those years, many wondered why Priscilla never married again. She had long-term relationships, including one with Marco Garibaldi, with whom she had a son, Navarone. But still, she never walked down the aisle. She didn't feel the need to put a label on her relationships. In her heart, she had already experienced something extraordinary. Elvis was not just a memory, he was a lasting presence. She often shared how unique and irreplaceable he was in her life. No matter how much time passed, Priscilla never allowed anyone to take the space that Elvis once held. Being with someone like Elvis changed her forever. He had a charm, energy, and presence that touched the world. But Priscilla had seen him in his most personal moments, in his joy, his pain, his fears, and his dreams. That bond was too deep to forget. Even with their ups and downs, her love for him never faded. To her, remarrying would have meant letting go of that love, and she wasn't ready to do that. Priscilla also understood how deeply Elvis had loved her. She believed that even after their divorce, he still cared for her. In her mind, the idea of marrying someone else felt like a betrayal, not just of Elvis, but of everything they had shared. She knew it would have hurt him, and she didn't want to cause that pain, even after he was gone. She carried a quiet loyalty that never faded. Instead of seeking a new husband, Priscilla focused on building her own life. She stepped into the world of acting and business. She helped turn Graceland into a tribute to Elvis, preserving his legacy for generations. She wrote books, gave interviews, and appeared at events to celebrate his life. Everything she did kept him close. Her life became a blend of personal growth and deep remembrance. She never turned away from love, but she also never tried to replace what she once had. Her heart had already been spoken for. Priscilla's strength wasn't in finding someone new. It was in holding on to the one love that shaped her entire life. As the years went on, she remained close to Lisa Marie. They shared a bond not just as mother and daughter, but as two people forever connected to Elvis. Lisa had her own struggles with fame and identity, but she always knew her mother was there. Priscilla stood by her through every high and low, giving her the support that only someone who had known Elvis so deeply could provide. Lisa eventually had children of her own, and Priscilla became a proud grandmother. She passed on her love and wisdom, always keeping the Presley name rooted in dignity and grace. Through all the changes in life, one thing stayed the same: Priscilla's love for Elvis and her devotion to the family they created. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.